Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in this great country. I am Robert Raben, work at Raben, and we are so honored and proud on behalf of our faith practice to gather some of the most, well, strike some of the most inspiring leaders in the nation on the issues that many of us care about, have taken time out of their extraordinary days to talk among themselves for the benefit of a strong conversation about how we move forward. We are living through a time of tremendous uncertainty again in this country, and our democracy is being tested. The tools that we rely on themselves are being questioned. Faith and politics, two of the most powerful forces that shape public life, are being talked about and used in ways that deepen division and do not deliver justice. Philanthropy is under pressure. But the answer in moments like this isn't to withdraw, but to be values driven and lead with clarity while staying grounded in purpose. Today's conversation is exactly about how to do that. We are honored to be joined by exceptional leaders. And to lead us through this conversation, I'm pleased to turn it over to a longtime friend and partner and a person of faith whom I admire enormously, Dr. Robert Ross. Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Robert, my good friend, my brother. Great to see you and great to be invited to participate in this conversation at an extraordinary moment in our nation's history. I will introduce the panel shortly, but I come to you in the role of facilitator with a twofold background. One is most recently retired from 24-year stint as president and CEO of the California Endowment. And in that role, I learned with glee and enthusiasm the value of investing in community and grassroots organizing to advance health and community justice, but in particular, faith-based organizing. We had great partners in organizations like PICO, IAF, COPE, other organizations who represented networks of faith-based leaders and at the grassroots level, and did fabulous work on Health for All, in the implementation of Obamacare, in care for undocumented residents, in wellness, nutrition programming, justice reform. The faith-based community did a fabulous job of advocacy and organizing and systems change. And then secondly, I come as a person of faith, a card-carrying member of the Episcopal Church in California, and continue to explore the relationship between faith and politics and policy and bridge building. And that'll be what our conversation is about today. And to give one more boost on this front, here in Los Angeles, I had an opportunity to attend a couple of prayer vigils in the face of some of the immigration activity here, hostile to the immigrant community in Los Angeles. Very difficult to stomach and to watch, but had my spirits lifted by a couple of prayer vigils that I attended. They were interfaith, multi-faith, multiracial, multicultural, peaceful, and inspiring. One of them ending in a march where we marched to the federal building and laid flowers at the feet of National Guardsmen in front of the federal building. It was just a powerful, powerful moment, Robert, and gave me a sense of hope when others are describing hopelessness. But our panelists are merchants in hope. We are joined by Bishop Mary Ann Budde, who serves as spiritual leader for the congregations and Episcopal schools in the District of Columbia and in Maryland that comprise the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. The first woman ever elected to this position. She also serves as chair of the Protestant Episcopal Cathedral Foundation, which oversees the ministries of the Washington National Cathedral and Cathedral Schools. And she's a powerful advocate and organizer in support of social justice, including racial equity, gun violence prevention, and immigration reform. Thank you for joining us, Bishop Budde. We also have, perhaps on hold, but should be joining in shortly, Senator Chris Coons, who continues to work. Oh, Senator, welcome,
Yeah,
sir.
I've got about 10 minutes, so let me know when you're done with introductions.
We're going to get you up first. You can get to that vote because we know that vote is needed, sir. And Senator Coons works on the Senate Appropriations Committee. I'm going to fast track his bio in sense of his time. And then after Senator Coons, we give Senator Coons a moment to weigh in. Then I'll introduce Dr. Reverend Jones, and then we'll be joined shortly by Congressman Cleaver. So Senator Coons, thank you so much, sir, for taking the opportunity to join us. Your audience is a blend of 200 nonprofit and leaders in philanthropy who care about the matter of social justice and a vibrant democracy, participatory democracy in this country. And we just wanted to engage you in the 10 minutes you have, now 9 minutes. You've led and you've been open about it, from a position of moral and spiritual clarity, engaging in that place called the Senate. And it's been a difficult time. And so one question is just a curious one, which is, how do you stay spiritually grounded while navigating the extreme difficulty and divisiveness of this moment?
Well, thank you, and thanks for a chance to be on with you, and thanks to my dear friend Robert for helping convene. First, you're presuming I am spiritually grounded in the question, so let's not presume. I think I try on a daily basis to be mindful that the question of whether I'm spiritually grounded and how I can restore some sense of spiritual balance is a pressing one. On occasion, I successfully keep a focus on the things that really matter by beginning my day with scripture reading, with prayer, with some time apart, or by participating in either the weekly bipartisan prayer breakfast, or there is a weekly faith and politics led, Democrats only reflection session. I go back and forth between the two. But bluntly, often by midday, whatever calm or peace or centering or glow has begun my day has well worn off. And this would be one of those days. Yes. We've been hammering away at each other on the floor now for about 6 hours. And what began as a day of optimism and positivity is slowly grinding into a challenging opportunity for speaking out and servant leadership.
Yeah, and thank you for representing in the way that you do, Senator. A question, particularly with our audience in mind. You've been successful in working across the aisle. I know it's more difficult these days and in recent months. But from your vantage point, what kinds of leadership investing, leadership formation, how should foundations and philanthropy be thinking about deploying their resources to advance faith-anchored bridge building in this country?
Well, look, we're in the middle of a gale force storm in elected office and in the Senate that is really pushing apart folks who would otherwise be working to pull together. I've had conversations on the floor today with Tom Tillis, with Lisa Murkowski, with James Langford, just now with Jerry Moran, who are people I've gotten to know as people. And often because we've either traveled together outside the United States to places where we got to know each other and know our spouses, or because we've been involved in faith-centered advocacy or action here in the Senate. And often one leads to the other. So I would encourage philanthropy, to the extent they're interested, to invest in bringing our staff and members together out of this setting where you're surrounded by, lobbyists and reporters and hangers-on and advocates, and give members and their staff a chance to get out of this place and connect with each other and connect with what should give them some common grounding. I've done these in a variety of ways. Just to speak briefly to it, a bipartisan group of us went to Gettysburg to actually walk the battlefield and reflect on that moment of real violence and real challenge for the very future of our nation. I also went on a bipartisan trip to South Africa with Congressman John Lewis, with survivors of the Charleston AME massacre, with the family of Bobby Kennedy, not including the current secretary. And it was a remarkable chance for reflection on a visit to Raben Island, on a visit with those who had come through the liberation struggle in South Africa to talk about reconciliation. So whether it's in pilgrimages to Alabama in our country or pilgrimages outside our country, whether it's reflecting on moments of division and difficulty or reflecting on how shared struggle allowed us to move forward, I think pulling us out of a context where we dedicate all our time to being on cable TV or tweeting at each other or fundraisers, and putting us in context where we get to know each other as people is a worthwhile investment.
I love those answers, and I'm going to be mindful of your time. We probably got 1 minute left if I'm watching the clock here. Hey, Senator, about a year from now, we'll be celebrating or honoring the 250th anniversary of this nation's birth, July 4th, 2026. In 2019, you co-led a national prayer breakfast. I just wonder if there's anything, given just the examples you just provided, is there anything we should be keeping in mind about that very special moment to celebrate, honor the 250th anniversary of this nation, and try and reclaim some of the sense of oneness as a nation?
Well, first, that it's always been a struggle. That, look, from our very founding, the American people have been divided. Ken Burns is working on a film right now, a series about the revolution. And in talking with him and with the folks who work on this project with him, one of the things most of us don't realize about the Revolutionary War and the period 250 years ago was the colonies were pretty sharply divided. There were folks who remained loyalists. There were folks who were dedicated to the struggle for independence, and a significant number of Americans who went back and forth, not sure we would win, not sure we should win. And there was a lot of division domestically, politically, and a lot of violence between those who were Tories and those who were patriots. So from our very founding 250 years ago, from that moment of risk in Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where these delegates signed their lives and their honor to the challenge of standing up a new nation in opposition to a monarchy, then the world's most powerful military force, we have always been in the process of forming a more perfect union, a process that has slowly, gradually, over 250 years, not uniformly, but slowly and gradually moved towards a more just and inclusive, tolerant, and faithful country. So first, I think we need to recognize the long way we've come. Second, I think we need to recognize the shared sacrifice it's required. Third, I think we need to tell stories of these 250 years that see everybody, that recognize all Americans and their history in this struggle, whether they've been in this country for a year, a generation, 10 generations, or 200 years, whether they are new to the American story or they helped shape it from well before the revolution. So a few quick points. I do think it is a profoundly flawed and mistaken effort to try and erase the full scope of the American story, to try and whitewash it and eliminate the diversity and equity and inclusion from a celebration of American history. To do that is to fail to recognize real American history. It was born in struggle, it continues in struggle, and it will extend in struggle. Last, we've often remarked on Martin Luther King's quote in settings here, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It bends towards justice. It was not directed towards justice from its very beginning. It was not guaranteed to end injustice. It only bends towards justice when we put our hands to the righteous work of insisting, demanding, fighting for it to be more just. I'm pointing towards the television that is showing the proceedings, the votes on the floor of the Senate right now. The bill that is likely to pass the Senate sometime in the middle of the night tonight is profoundly unjust. It moves us backwards in terms of caring for the hungry and the sick, the widow and the orphan. It makes ours a coarser and a more divided nation. I think we need to be clear that there is hard work to do ahead in order for us to see this 250th anniversary as an opportunity for celebration and for us to build in a positive way a consensus moving forward that we all do better when we all do better.
Senator, on behalf of all of our colleagues on this call and the panelists, I'm sure, thank you, sir. We are so glad that you are there. Stay strong, stay clear. You're providing moral leadership, and it's badly needed at this moment. So we appreciate you, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. It was great to be on with you.
Well, I have to say, for me, when you're consumed with reading the newspaper and watching the news, and you can't help but feel bummed out, Senator Coons provides a breath of fresh air in that context, and so we really appreciate Senator Coons and hope his efforts in that vote of this afternoon go better than anticipated or expected. With that, let me get back to introduction. I want to introduce Reverend Dr. Serene Jones, who is the 16th president of Union Theological Seminary in New York City, the first woman to lead the 188-year-old institution. She holds the Johnson Family Chair for Religion and Democracy and is past president of the American Academy of Religion. Before Union, she spent 17 years at Yale, where she served as a Titus Street professor of theology and led the program in women, gender, and sexuality studies. And she's the author of several books, including Call It Grace, Finding Meaning in a Fractured World, which sounds like perfect reading for this moment now. And so we thank you, Reverend Jones, Dr. Jones, for joining us as well. And then I'll introduce Congressman Cleaver. We're expecting him in the next 15 minutes or so as well. But let's start with Bishop Budde. You've walked with communities through political unrest. You've spoken out. You're a spiritual leader. You're trying to advance the theme of bridge building in an extremely difficult context and landscape. So it's hard. But from your experience, what does it take actually what's it going to take to achieve bridge building in this moment? What's it going to take, and what do philanthropic leaders need to understand about our investments that can help support bridge building from your vantage point?
Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for that very simple question to begin with. I would say that bridge building is in a time like now is actually quite elusive, and it begins, as Senator Coons was saying, with the kinds of relationships that allow us to see one another as people, and that requires face-to-face time in contexts where people's dignity is never in question. And so no matter what you and I whatever positions we may hold, however we might agree or disagree, we have to create an environment where no one is afraid of their dignity being stamped upon. And that's challenging given the constancy of the culture of contempt that we are marinating in now as a society. And so I would say that's the first thing that we attempt to do, is to create those kind of environments. At the same time, it is important, it's incumbent, I think, upon all of us, and I speak for myself here, to come to those conversations with a degree of honesty and clarity about core values, and to have an understanding about what those values are. Because if we can't begin there, And I'm not saying we have to agree on those values. We have to find a way to talk to one another from a place of our values, and to have a curiosity about the values and life experiences that are bringing us to the moments of such division. So I would say that. And then I would think the third, which is perhaps where philanthropy can be the most helpful, we have such a dearth of of, of education. And what I mean by education is a foundation of common definitions and common starting points. And that has become increasingly challenging. And so how to have resources and ways of simplifying or clarifying the terms upon which we will have our conversations. I think that is critical, because right now we are speaking different languages, and we are coming from such different assumptions that it's not possible to build a bridge, because the analogy doesn't hold. We have to find the places from which a bridge can then be built, which is sobering.
Yeah, I already picked up a common theme between Senator Coons's comments and your own, and perhaps something for us in philanthropy. You've spoken to the value of creating the right kind of space for folks who don't typically see one another in particularly humane context, and see the humanity and appreciate the humanity in one another, and create the space and see where it goes, which for philanthropy might be a little uncomfortable. We like knowing exactly what our investments are going to yield. But Senator Coons rattled off 4 or 5 examples of opportunities to create that kind of space, and so it sounds to me like you're seconding that kind of approach that philanthropy might consider.
Well, and the ways that I mean, I think right now institutions are many of our service institutions are truly vulnerable right now. Truly vulnerable. And it's hard to be creative forces for good when you're struggling to survive. And so another way that philanthropy might consider its, and each organization that I've been in touch with has its particular carriage and its particular mission, but to seek out those institutions that are serving the good, the common good on a teaspoon, and whose very existence is under attack right now, or is simply threatened by insufficient resources. And that may be another way for, in a time when it's important to preserve some really fundamental services that are being, as we've heard, systematically dismantled from the social fabric of the country. And I'm certainly asking this as a faith leader, where do we invest to keep some things going when the social contracts of an entire generation is being disassembled? So that's another thought, just in terms of where we preserve the institutions upon which so much of our society depends.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn to Dr. Jones in a minute. One last question, Bishop, but because you've done this and we've watched you do this. How do you discern when it's time to speak up and speak out? I suspect that decision comes with prayer.
It's a constant discernment, Dr. Ross. And I don't always get it right. I could, if I spoke out on every issue that was worthy of being addressed, I would be constantly talking and no one would listen. And so part of the art, particularly for someone in a rather precarious position, and I think a faith position is a precarious one. We don't have a constant megaphone. It's how not only to speak, but how to be heard. I try actually to speak rarely so that when I do, it has a chance of getting across, if that makes sense.
Yes. You got
And
to
so
pick your
sometimes
spot.
I got to pick, and I don't, like I said, I don't always get it right. And I often speak on issues and nobody cares, nobody listens. And every once in a while, it penetrates, but there's a question of timing, of context, and all the better. And I know Reverend Dr. Jones knows this. That all the better if we're doing it in solidarity with one another, if we are a collective,
Yes,
as opposed to lone rangers. And I feel like those are some of the
absolutely. Solidarity matters, especially now. Dr. Jones, I want to ask you a question about leading a seminary at this point in time, but anything in response to what we heard from the senator or from the bishop that you want to elaborate on?
Just to say amen to everything that they've shared. And I think in particular what Bishop Booty just said about the fragility of so many organizations that are providing frontline care that are fragile. Many of those organizations are led by faith-based leaders. And to support the organizations, it's also to have a storehouse of leaders who are capable and trained and grounded enough in their faith that even in the hardest of times, they're doing this work because they can do nothing else but do this work. But that comes with training, and that comes with having a community behind you. That comes with a lifetime of commitment. And I see at a seminary that formation that happens that leads to leaders like Bishop Buddy and Senator Coons and Congressman Cleaver all were formed in seminaries that created a context where deep thinking about these issues can happen. Because if we don't sink down deep into the soil of what's happening in our country and we just stay on the surface, we're not getting to the moral complexity of what's going on. And that's where the change happens, when the moral conversations begin to be had. But that moral language doesn't just come naturally to people. Like Bishop Buddy said, just even finding the language to talk to each other when, as we've seen, the training in religious communities in general decline, we have also seen the loss of a moral language that we share to have those conversations through. So I
Yeah, and
for that.
thank you for that. I'm going to turn to my next question for you in a second. I just want to let our colleagues know who've joined us today that there will be an opportunity for Q&A. It may not be a lengthy or prodigious opportunity, but please, if you have questions that you'd like to articulate, put them in the chat. And Sarah Weatherby and I will conspire to get those questions heard. So at this moment, Dr. Jones, you're leading a seminary, and it's preparing leaders to show up in a world with moral courage. And so I'm intrigued by what the up and coming generation of faith leaders and younger faith leaders, or aspiring to be faith leaders, are how they're managing through this moment and how you're helping them navigate through it. It's not a moment we've seen in quite some time in this nation. And so what gives you pause? What gives you optimism about leading a seminary at this time?
Well, the first thing is I have to always be aware of how limited my view is, because the world that they are stepping into is so different from the world in which I was formed in seminary. The questions they're dealing with, the time span they think about, the magnitude and force of what they're facing is something that in my own training, that was not at the forefront of what we were engaging. So I just say a prayer every day for them. There is in the student body, you would understand, like amongst so many people, a significant amount of fear that to step forward with moral courage and lead communities requires assessing and being realistic about the cost of it. It's not easy to do, and there are real consequences to it. But what I'm seeing in this generation is not just moral critique of what's happening, but a very sincere desire to cultivate moral imagination, to not just say what's wrong, but to follow that with saying, this is how it could be. And to have a very strong moral imagination requires community. And so also helping students understand how much they need each other and how much they need to stand on the shoulders of the generations before them, because that's also sort of the community of the ancestors, which is there holding them, which is also grounded in the scriptures that a multi-religious community turns to. So they inspire me daily, and I pray for them daily because they are up against so much. And so many of them at a young age in their life.
Yeah, so a shift from moral critique and even moral outrage, which is necessary,
Yeah.
but to more of a moral imagination, which is um, how do you invite that? Talk a little bit about unpack a little bit about how you invite that with either with your students or even from the pulpit, is to move from moral outrage to moral imagination, particularly now.
Well, two things. One of the most constant ways to do that is the Christian context, as a Christian minister, is to turn to the scriptures and to see the vast range of ways in which people have responded in times of severe crisis and violence. There are so many directions you can find there that are surprising. And then secondly, it is simply always laying before the students and before the faculty at Union, I think across the world in churches and seminaries and religious communities, to ask them, okay, I understand what you're critiquing. Now, what would you do instead? And to keep that question constantly there and not to pretend like you have an answer. And I think we're searching for the way forward together, but it's almost at this point the consistency of that question. So what should we be doing instead? So what should we be building and working towards? And admitting the mystery that that question carries, but also the real call to action that is always in the question, what we should be building, meaning what should we be acting towards?
Yeah, well, what helps me is, and both of you are familiar with Dr. Martin Luther King's framing, more accurately reframing of the beloved community in this nation. Start there and invoke the imagination and work backwards from there. Both of you are familiar with the civil rights movement. We think about how fractured and divided and divisive things are in our nation right now. So you try and go back and say, okay, what have we seen before that provides us with wisdom, experiential wisdom, or guidance going forward? And I'm just wondering whether there's anything in the civil rights movement, which was a tough time in this nation. I mean, right now we have a holiday, Dr. Martin Luther King. He's on stamps. He's got streets named after him. But he wasn't a particularly popular guy when he was raising Cain, as we know that about spiritual leaders who are often well, they're not received kindly by much of the public and civic elite. But anything from the civil rights movement that we should be reaching back into that gives us guidance and wisdom at this moment?
Now, one of the things I've been
Bishop
thinking,
Buddy?
one of the things I've been thinking a lot about actually, and I was just spent my whole career studying the civil rights movement, but I never studied as much the decades of the early 20th century until recently. And I've been thinking a lot, particularly in Washington, D.C., of the years after Reconstruction, when so much was dismantled, when so many gains that had been realized were systematically dismantled. The segregation of the federal workforce, the housing code that kept us segregated, and what it was like for the leaders of that era and how they persevered. So the early years of Thurgood Marshall, for example, not when he was a Supreme Court justice, but when he was a circuit lawyer, the NAACP, trying, case by case to strive for justice with an imperfect constitution in And people like Polly Murray, and these icons of persistence and hope, the grandparents of John Lewis and Martin Luther King and their parents. I find a kind of sadness, not a kind of deep sadness about where we are right now as a country, because we're seeing so much being stripped away and being done with a religious overlay, which is actually shameful to me. But to say, okay, even this we have seen before, and there were ways to lead. We have examples of people who led with courage and tenacity then. And maybe my generation, I'm in my 60s now, maybe my generation is one called to provide the persistence and hopes that someone coming up behind me. And so what you were saying earlier, Dr. Jones, about the younger generations, maybe my job is to just keep pouring love and encouragement in their sails, because I may not see it again for a while, you know? And I don't want to be one of those people that I don't want them to carry my despair or my cynicism. I want to pour hope into them, but also recognize that we are witnessing on our watch something that I never imagined could happen. And how do I maintain a sense of dignity and persistence in the wake of that? And so those are the people I find myself going back to.
Yes, yes. And through the weapons of peace and love. Congressman
Exactly.
Cleaver, thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining us. Good sir. And we know your time is limited. Let me get you caught up on, and let me just introduce very quickly for a minute or two, Congressman Cleaver, to those maybe less familiar with him. And then I'll have a question for you to weigh in, Congressman. He is now serving his 11th term representing Missouri's 5th Congressional District, home district, which I did not know, of President Harry Truman. He is a ranking member of the House Subcommittee on Housing and Insurance, and also serves on the Subcommittee on Capital Markets and the United States Helsinki Commission. Lifelong public servant, first African-American mayor of Kansas City, led major redevelopment projects across the city. In Congress, he has continued being a powerful advocate for economic justice, racial equity, urban revitalization, including his nationally recognized Green Impact Zone. And he's also familiar with the distance traveled between pulpit and power. And so thank you for joining us, Congressman Cleaver. Let me quickly just get you caught up with what our conversation has been thus far. You just missed your colleague, Senator Coons, who had to leave for a vote. We've heard from Bishop Buddy and Dr. Jones. Your audience today is philanthropic and nonprofit leaders who are intrigued at the intersection of social justice and faith, and bridge building and healing the divide in this country. I took 3 things from our colleagues so far. One, philanthropic organizations should consider, if they're interested in moving this work forward, consider investing in creating spaces for people to come together and work across political differences and bridge the divide, hopefully in a value-centered kind of way. And Senator Coons gave a couple of examples of what he has experienced in trips to South Africa with his colleagues and others. Secondly, we heard from Dr. Jones, don't forget about investing in the grassroots organizations, the faith-based organizations that are doing the work right now of responding in social justice and getting folks mobilized and getting folks the support and services they need. And then thirdly, we heard about the need for all of us to consider a shift from a faith orientation, not just as moral critique or even moral outrage, but to moral imagination and imagining a better future for this country. So we turn to you, Congressman Cleaver. Thank you so much for your leadership, your track record of social justice in your work. But any thoughts you want to share, advice, wisdom, for those of us in the field of philanthropy in particular, who have resources to deploy towards this end, and anything you think we should be considering doing more of, or perhaps something you've seen in your own state of a home state that has worked in terms of investing in faith-based organizing and faith-based efforts. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. I apologize. I wish I could have been on at the beginning. Oddly, I'm at the Healthcare Foundation office meeting with the CEO.
Beautiful.
And the Healthcare Foundation was created a few years back when one of the hospitals tried to flee the urban core. Some of us filed a suit, and there were a lot of things they had to do to move. And one of the things we ended up with an agreement that gave about $800,000 to create a healthcare foundation, and they've been operating and doing from my theology, the Lord's work for years and years and years. I was on the original board, but I had to resign when I was elected to Congress. But I really appreciate this conversation. I've been looking forward to it because I'm not sure that we ought to be hanging out any other place right now except the intersection of faith and politics. I think that corner is available, and from it can I think create the opportunities for our country to recover and then proceed. I started out in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I grew up in SCLC. I led my first march when I was a sophomore. About 55 stupid, ignorant kids followed me to march to desegregate some movie theaters down in Texas, where I was born and raised. Went to college at Prairie View, and they followed me, and it caught the attention of the leadership at that time, which was Dr. King was the president, Ralph Abernathy was kind of the vice president, Joseph Lowry was the chair of the board, primarily because he was a Methodist, and Dr. King didn't want it to seem like a Baptist organization, so they got Joe Lowry to be the chair of the board. He stayed as board chair for a long time until Walter Fundroy took over as board chair, and he became president. This was after Dr. Abernathy resigned and ran for the 5th district seat in Georgia. Andrew Young eventually got the seat. And
inspired to hear how the Baptists look kindly upon the Methodists.
I tell you, and
that's some bridge building right there.
I've been telling them for the last few years that the best thing they ever did was to desegregate and let the Methodists come in. And I live in the Methodist building in Washington. I've lived there for 20 years since I was elected for a lot of reasons. And one of them is there's a chapel there, and Lord knows when I leave the Hill, I need to go to a chapel every day. But Thomas Paine said, "These are the times that try men's souls." And what Thomas Paine was trying to say to the revolutionary fighters is that this is not a weekend warrior kind of commitment we're making. This is a commitment of one's whole self. If this idea about putting this nation together is going to work at a time when our souls are being tested and tried, it means we got to give everything we have to this cause. These are the times that try men's souls. And so I think Thomas Paine's words are applicable right now as much as they were back in the revolutionary moment in the history of our nation. And I believe irreversibly that there is no separation from faith and social revolution. And I think the Holy Writ is clear. Moses didn't end up leading the people because he was trying to avoid religion and politics, the politics of Egypt. He was in conflict with the politics of Egypt, and led the first AFL-CIO strike when the children of Israel didn't get what he asked for. Then he told them we're gonna move and we're gonna demonstrate, and they moved and they demonstrated, and God helped them in that demonstration. And so I don't see a disconnect at all. Now I don't think, I mean, I've made many speeches from the floor of the House of Representatives, and I've never gone down there and said to them, God told me to tell you. I don't do that. But what I do is use, like everybody else, my own experiences, my own beliefs to support the things that I support. I mean, healthcare, for example. I mean, Jesus established the first hospitals. I mean, we are uniquely supposed to be involved in this discussion right now about healthcare, and early on, to show you how deep the connection was between Jesus and healthcare issues. Most of the early churches and 98% of the ones today carry some religious tone to it. Baptist Hospital, the Methodist Hospital in downtown Dallas, St. Mary's Hospital. I mean, on and on and on. They didn't name it. They didn't say Al Capone Hospital or Robert Redford Hospital. I mean, it was a hospital because of the healer, the great healer, and I think that's what we have to do right now more than any other moment, is to be the healers. Because I don't think it's just beating up on the people who are causing the problem. We got to do that for sure. We got to make sure that people understand why we're having these problems and who brought them on. But also, we have to believe if there's a nation on the planet that has been blessed by God Almighty, it's the United States. And maybe we would have been a lot better if we accepted that reality. I mean, it's not by missiles and bombs that this happened. And maybe I'll leave this planet not knowing exactly why God chose the United States, but we have been chosen, no question in my mind. Now, I don't think we deserve it, and maybe it'd be wrong if I thought we did. Maybe this is the ideal that God wanted us to reach for. I've blessed you. And so I want you to take that blessing, develop this nation of freedom, and then bless the rest of the world. We haven't been doing that. At least I don't think we have. And I work in a body now where, and I'm frightened about it, the whole movement toward Christian nationalism, from my perspective, is one of the most dangerous things that could happen right now in this century. To try to intermingle our politics or our ideology with Christianity so that it has a stronger tone to it, and so, I mean, I've sat on the floor of the House of Representatives and heard people actually say that God supports cutting the money out of SNAP because God wants us to be more economically frugal. Now, I haven't found the frugal scripture yet, but I've only been reading it now for about 45 years, so I'm going to have to read a little deeper. But
yeah, maybe you missed that chapter in the Bible.
I missed it. I missed it. And
Hey, Congressman Cleaver, we've got about 10 minutes left. Let me ask, I'm going to ask a two-part question, starting with you, and then ask the Bishop and Dr. Jones to weigh in as well. Two-part question from the audience in the chat. One is, what keeps you hopeful? And secondly, what can people do to buoy their hope, strengthen their hope?
I got a quick answer. I think we have hope because water is wet. And the reason I know water is wet is because I got up this morning, I took a shower and it was wet. And the reason I took a shower this morning is because the water was wet yesterday and the day before. In fact, I've never taken a shower when the water wasn't wet. And so I believe that if God created water yesterday, God can create water today. And as long as water is wet, I think God is on the throne, and we won't run out of water. And so I have hope. Every day, every morning I get up, take a shower, and it's a whole new experience of the wetness and beauty and blessings of God.
Congressman Cleaver, I'm now every time I think of you now, I'm gonna think about Moses as a community organizer, and I will not forget what you just said when I take my shower in the morning. Bishop Buddy, why are you hopeful? How can folks be more hopeful? You're muted, Bishop. Okay.
Am I back now? Hope for me is hopelessness is not an option for me. I feel that it is it's a spiritual practice and a commitment that I've made, and I feel that as the representative said, that I believe that God has not given up on us, and so I will never. I feel a responsibility to steward hope, to cherish hope. When I feel it, I'm grateful for feeling hopeful, but I believe in hope even when I don't feel it. And I live by hope even in my saddest moments, because that's what I believe we're called to do. And the thing that keeps me hopeful, I think, is the utter persistence of the human enterprise. And so if I've lost hope for a day, someone else is carrying it for me. And sometimes I'm carrying it for others. It's a gift that we're entrusted with, and is what allows us to get up in the morning and believe that it's a new day. So I would say, in terms of what people do to preserve hope, is to look for it and to be mindful of the tiny and the large ways that our hopeful spirit is buoyed, but not to worry too much if you lose hope on a given day. I think you'd be made of stone, not to lose hope in yourself, but to realize that hope abounds somewhere else, and someone else is carrying it, and it'll come back to you, and we will persevere together.
Yeah.
Dr. Jones?
Oh, that's what one inspiring answers. What gives me hope is, I think, just my faith has put hope in my bones. So I don't know how to not hope. But as I have grown older and tried to mature around the complexity of hoping, I've realized the difference between a kind of naive, enthusiastic optimism, which has to deny what's happening around you, and a hope that just stands there and imagines and insists on a future, even in the face of no evidence for it. I mean, it's hope in what is not seen. And if there was a time that called for a non-trivial hope, not enthusiastic, like everything's great, it's going to be fine, it's got to be an honest hope. And that is what faith leaders can bring to this moment, is an honest hope not a trivial one. And man, do we need honest hope right now.
Absolutely. I will say what has given me, from a very personal perspective, hope is that, at the top of this panel, I mentioned that I had the opportunity to attend a prayer vigil, an interfaith prayer vigil, Congressman Cleaver, that was protesting against some of the immigration tactics that we've seen play out in the streets of Los Angeles. And for me, just being there, watching these multi-faith, interfaith leaders, folks who have been subjected to terror, bearing witness and telling their stories. It was goosebump inspiring. And so to anyone who is, if you haven't participated in a peaceful demonstration that hopefully is hosted or co-hosted by the faith community in your region, if you need a dose of hope, there you go. It's just beautiful to see. And we heard about the undying faith that Congressman Cleaver brings to this. The quotes from our colleagues, Dr. Jones and Bishop Buddy, my faith has put hope in my bones. Hopelessness is not an option. I just want to close by asking Robert Raben. Robert, are you still available? Any closing observations or comments before we sign off, my brother? You're muted, Robert.
I do my best work on mute. What a joy this has been. Everybody's busy, but we come together around hope. And Congressman, I will not just enjoy Water is Wet, but think about the incredible work that you and everybody else does. Dr. Ross, thank you for convening us. Dean Jones, Bishop Buddy, it's just been an extraordinary blessing to realize, in the face of so much opposition, this is the strength right here. And we are grateful to everyone and blessed to be in solidarity with you. So thank you all so much for coming today.
And invest in faith-based organizing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the Raben Group. Thank you, Sarah, for your support.